Rosh Hashanah is a day of many, many paradoxes, many conflicting values. In general, in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're so different from Him. You can't build an interface with some things so different through one variable. If I talk to my friend, our interface is we're friends, we're brothers, we're husband and wife. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so different from us. Do we love Him? Do we fear Him? Both. On Rosh Hashanah, those paradoxes become magnified, because this is the Yom Hadin, this is the Yom HaMalchus, Hayom HaRasolam, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Melocha Kol Olam Kulo B'Chvodecha. So our attempt to interact with HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to be mediated by a lot of different values, many crosswinds. Is it a day of gravitas and solemnity? Is it a day of happiness? Is it a day of particularism? Is it a day of universalism? So much happening on Rosh Hashanah. It's important to expand your imagination and not just get stuck on one dimension or one element. It's very hard. It's very hard, unlike Yom Kippur, which is much easier to shrink into one or two aspects, very deep aspects. Rosh Hashanah is very kaleidoscopic, many different colors, many different tones. And because of all those different tones, there are a lot of very sharp turns in the davening and the Nizכה Tefillah, where all of a sudden the tone shifts on a dime. One of them is in the section of Zikhronot. Section of Zikhronot is the second section in Tefillas Musaf, and every set of 10 psukim for Malchus, 10 psukim for Zikhronot, 10 psukim for Shafaros, every section has an introduction and a conclusion, before the psukim and after the psukim, and the introduction sets the tone. So the introduction for Zikhronos begins on a very, very somber, even frightening note. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you remember everything, you recall everything. You don't forget anything. You remember anything that's happened, you span history, you scan history, you have a sweep of history. Now, if you're internalizing these words, it's a little frightening. HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers everything, namely my behavior, my actions. He doesn't forget. He's judging me. He's registering everything. It's a little frightening. And it gets even more frightening when we zoom out, and it's not just individuals, but al hamidinos bo yomer ezel lachera ve'ezel lashalom ezel lara ve'ezel lasova. So Hashem isn't just calculating personal fate. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is calculating history, humanity, states, nations, races. It's a pretty heavy day. There's a lot happening, a lot's at stake, and it's not really working in our favor for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to remember everything about our lives. And I think it reaches, I wouldn't say a climax because it's a low point in Nadir, in two phrases in this introduction. Two phrases which to me are very soulful, very woeful. Mi lo nifkad kayom hazeh. Who isn't? Mi lo, you can't escape. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Yonah. Everything Yonah tries to capture. Anevrach mi ponecha, as David HaMelech says. The second phrase in this introduction that I think captures it is, and Rav Amital, Zikhronot Livracha, would always sing this in a very woeful tune, Ashrei shelo yishkacheko v'enadam yisametzbach. It would have been so much better had we not forgotten HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but sadly we never forget to forget. Anyway, so at this point, you're up against the wall. You're in a tight situation. Heavy day, gravitas, solemnity, Hashem remembers everything, nothing is forgotten, individual, collective, Milo nifkad kayom hazeh. And then at that point, the whole theme turns and the words change. And effectively, before I iterate the words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a day of Zikaron, and there's a lot to remember that would be frightening and daunting for us in our future. But please also remember all of our schuyos, our relationship, the brisos. And then you actually look at the psukim, Chazal chose, they're all psukim of Ahava. The Rob Psukim of bris, starting with Noach, and of course in Noach there isn't yet a bris because it's not yet Jewish history, it's just human history, but there's Rachamim, Vaiskalokim, Es Noach, Vaiskalochaya, the first pasuk. And then once we segue to the other psukim, the psukim become dominated with bris. Vaishmalokim Es Nakasam, Vaiskaras Briso, Vizachartis Brisi Yaakov, Vaz Brisi Yitzchak, Vaiskalam Briso, Vainachak Kurav Chasadav. So the word bris is all over the psukim. Chanun Varachom Hashem. There's Rachmanis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Vayinachem Kurav Chasadav, there's comforting, and the entire tone shifts, and that's the paradox of the day. Is it a day of Yom Hadin, and fear, and dread, and trembling, and solemnity, and standing, and fate? It is. And that's why it's called Yom HaZikaron. But it's also called Yom HaZikaron because it's the day to recall all of our merits and all of our Zechuyos and all of the Ahava and all of the Bris. And not only the Ahava, the Bris, and the Rachamim and the Chanun, but the last two psukim of Zikhronos in which Avas Kulosayich, we're your wife, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you want to be nice to us. We've been with you for a long time. This is a long marriage. We want to be kind to each other. And please love us like you used to love us. And then Aben Yakir Li Ephraim, we're your son, and Yelad Shashuim. So Zikhronos, especially this introduction, condenses these two conflicting tones. And the secret of Rosh Hashanah is not to resolve the conflicts, to sustain the clashes, to sustain the tension, and to use that tension to create energy and electricity and power and glory for the day. And this is just one of the paradoxes. Just one of the paradoxes is it a day of fear and fright, or is it a day of love and affection? How do you take the day of Yom HaZikaron? It has to be both, because it's not a day of fear and magnitude. You want to appreciate the impact and the potency of our bris with HaKadosh Baruch Hu.